It is a Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship founder and president, David Feldman. And Dave, coming off 2 events in 3 weeks, cross-country to boot, Knucklemania 4 in California, BKFC 61 in Connecticut. So, I mean, getting these amazing markets going. So just talk to me first. How are you doing, man? How are you holding up? I know the schedule, the travel, everything, it's getting crazy.
It's tough, man. I'll be honest with you, man. It is tough. This jet lag, man, it sets in and it's crazy. And then you don't even have enough time to worry about it, and you got to fly somewhere else. But I mean, look, we're making a lot of things happen, and it's all worth it, right? So we always wondered, is it going to be worth it? Is it going to be worth it? And it's totally worth it, man. I mean, we're moving mountains, really. We really, truly are. We're doing things that no one ever thought we would be able to do, especially in this time frame. So it's been an amazing journey so far, and it's, definitely tough going from one part of the world to the other part of the world and then going and meeting everybody. But at the end of the day, it's like I said, it's rewarding.
That's awesome, man. You kind of touched on it there, but I mean, to me, it really does feel like the momentum is building for BKFC, right? Like the organization is now entering the combat sports discussion more and more as like mainstream and accepted. So I guess, you look at it, it's basically 6 years, right? From the first event. I mean, it's basically the anniversary of it. So what's your perspective on like kind of where you stand and what the acceptance level is and the momentum that you're feeling right now?
I mean, we're in the same conversations as any top combat sport organization out there now. And like we're in the top conversations for any free agent out there. It's just, it's amazing. It's funny. I was talking about this earlier. Like I do every once in a while. Now I look out, like just take a step back and like, man, what are we doing here? Like really, like, because sometimes I'm like, dude, what are we doing here? And now I'm like, man, look at what we're doing here, man. It's crazy, but it's fun. And look, man, it's amazing. I think that I really think this in a very, humble way. I think we moved some mountains that people never thought we would move.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of those mountains in a second. I did want to ask you, like, what is your selling point to the doubters, right? Because, like, it feels so familiar to me. It reminds me of MMA, right? In the beginning, there was this education process. Like, what? Fighting on the ground? You shouldn't do that. Or, like, what? These small gloves? You shouldn't do that. And it was like you had to educate people that, hey, man, not only is this safe, but it might even be more safe than what you're used to with traditional boxing. And so it was just this education process. So when you now come up to doubters, like I said, a lot of momentum, but I'm sure you still get some pushback of like, oh no, that's not for me. I can't do it. What's your selling point to people to say, listen, man, this is why I think you should give this a shot?
I mean, I literally go back and I go, listen, imagine pitching this to somebody without any data or without any fights to show you. Imagine me trying to tell you how safe it is or how it's not that dangerous. Well, guess what? I have the data now, and the data shows me that we have less concussive and subconcussive damage. We have less facial fractures. We even have less hand breaks than boxing or mixed martial arts. We do have more lacerations, and guess what? People like blood, but we're stitching them up at the end of the night. We're sending them home safe and sound to their family, and that's my pitch. Like that's really my pitch. That is exactly my pitch, and I think once I do that and say, listen, I want to tell you that it's so exciting. It's unbelievable. And then I go to tell you on this too. It's relatable because let me tell you, although everything, you've been in MMA for a long time and the questions to ask. But if I ask a room full of people that are very casual combat sports fans and I go, do you know what an Uma Pilata is? And do you know what a Kimura is? And they're going to go, no. And I'm going to say, do you know what a bare knuckle punch to the face is? And every man, woman, child, black, white, Chinese, doesn't matter who you are, how old you are, you know what a bare knuckle punch is. That's my sales pitch. And they go, wow, man, you're right. You're right. It's crazy, but I'm right. And the fans, when I talk to them, they get it, so they get behind it. And it's almost like they can see themselves in there a little bit, right? Like you're not really going to see yourself wrapping someone's knee up in some of those holes, but you're going to see yourself punching someone in the mouth and saying, I did that, or I saw my best friend do that, or I saw my brother did it, or I got punched in the face. You can relate to it. And if you can relate to it, that allows you to really support it and get behind it. And I think that's why we have more of a cult following that's turning into a mainstream following now.
That's well said. That's well said. All right. Well, listen, you talked about some mountains that were moving. The biggest mountain, of course, in all of combat sports, Conor McGregor. He's now a part owner of BKFC. I know you went out to Dublin last week to get all the paperwork signed. I guess I mean, just how did this all come about? I know that, you know, he had kind of worked with you and his company had worked with you as a sponsor, but to make this shift, how did the whole thing happen?
You know, it started when he came to the event and just really was a fan because you know, he had no horse in the race. He just loved it. And then he kept talking about it for days after. And I'm like, what the hell just happened here? Like, why is this guy talking about it like this? And then we got into where his stout became a sponsor of ours. So 4-Hour Spout is a BKFC sponsor. And then we just started communicating with the teams. And then we lined up to have some conversations. And, you know, it was obviously a great fit for us. And I think it's a great fit for him as well because, you know, who doesn't know him in combat sports? Everybody does. He's one of the biggest sports icons in the past 25 years. Total sports icons, especially combat sports. So it was a great, you know, partnership for us. And he has a significant amount of equity, enough to make him really excited and to really try to make things happen here. So we're happy about it, and he's happy about it.
That's awesome. What can you tell us about the structure of the deal? I mean, is this a situation where he put up capital into the company as an investment, or is this more of an exchange for services? I mean, obviously, it makes sense to be associated with that guy in any way possible. So what can you tell us about the structure of the deal?
I can't tell you much only because we talked about not really talking about how we're doing things. But I'll tell you, you know, he has a significant amount of equity, and that can probably tell you how the deal kind of shook out a little bit. So he loves it. I mean, his team loves it. I was out there with him. Like I said, the one thing about the meeting was he's very savvy. He's a lot more savvy than I thought he was. He really gets it. He understands it, and he understands the growth of it. And then talk about Conor McGregor, the person. We drove around in his car for a little bit, just me and him, just to get to know each other. And let me tell you something, man. What a stand-up dude. Loves his country, loves his people, loves the people that have been with him. And, you know, just really couldn't have went into business with a better guy.
It's pretty incredible, too, when you think about it. I mean, you've built this company from nothing and know you've had to scrap hard to do it. I mean, it mirrors his story, right? I mean, this guy what came from nothing. I mean, the story's famous, the social welfare that he was on when he got to the UFC. And now, as you said, one of the most recognized athletes on the planet, certainly the biggest star in the history of MMA.
One of the things that we did that really made me like, man, this guy is grounded. We went to, I think it's called Crumlin Boxing Academy, where he trained, and we watched some amateur fights there. They have amateur fights every Thursday night, and we were watching them, and he was talking to everybody. He was showing people how to throw some different punches. He was taking pictures with everybody, and I was like, man, this guy's really grounded, man. He loved it. You know, it was a part of him, you could tell, and I really appreciate that because of, you know, my heritage with boxing, and I love it. And I was like, man, this is awesome. The one thing I said to him, I remember, I'm like, man, I said, I miss this smell, like the real raunchy smell of a boxing gym. And I was like, man, this smell, man, it was great. It was a good time. It was a good time to get to know who the person Conor McGregor was, and then also to get to know who the business guy Conor McGregor was.
That's awesome. So I guess the obvious question, right? Any concern with the UFC? I mean, I know you had you met with Dana White, of course, UFC CEO, back in January. I can't imagine you guys were talking about this, but did you talk about it then, or did they need to be involved in this anyway? Was there clearance? I don't really know how the contracts work as far as a business investment outside of fighting.
Yeah, look, obviously that conversation came up, and they said we handled what we needed to handle, and you know, that's as much as I know about this. I know that we're not a competitor to UFC. And even if we were neck and neck with them, we're still not a competitor. We're in our own lane, and we're not neck and neck with them. We're not even anywhere close to it. Dana White is a good dude. From what I met him, Conor McGregor speaks very highly of him, loves the UFC, loves everything about it, never had a negative word to say. He said, I plan on staying here. So probably one of your questions is, do you think he's ever going to fight here? And obviously, I would love him to fight here, but he loves the UFC, and why not? They have a really good marriage. They both made a lot of money together. And like I said, he said, Dana's a great dude. I told him, I said, I met Dana and I thought he was a good dude. So, I mean, at the same time, like, I'm not here to talk or disparage or do anything with anybody. I'm here to build BKFC. And I think that's why we build it, because we don't talk negatively about anybody else. There's nothing else to say. Look, we want to put on a great product, and that's all we're going to do. And now we have a little bit of what I've been calling in the past week. We have a little bit of rocket fuel now to get that thing to go really, really fast.
It's funny because people have asked me, do you think Conor will fight with BKFC? And I said, look, I don't know contractually if it'll make sense financially, all those things. But well, I'll tell you this, the competitor in that man, he absolutely would fight BKFC. You know, I mean, that dude will fight any combat available. So we'll see what the future holds. But I guess in the immediate future, like, what role do you see him taking on? Like, what are the expectations of what he'll do? I mean, just being associated with the name, just having him around, I mean, you know the kind of headlines that garners. But I mean, does he take an active role in doing things? Or like, what do we see Conor McGregor do with BKFC?
Yeah, I think he helps with, a lot of different introductions, especially because he knows everybody in the world. So introductions, fighters, new fighters, stories. The one thing he did talk a lot about was, let's just create stories, man. We got to create stories because guess what? All we need is some stars, and let's make our own stars. So he's into it. Like, there's going to be a lot more. He's not going to do the day-to-day stuff. He's not going to do any of that, but he's going to come up with ideas. He's going to help move the needle. He's going to do introductions. He's going to do everything we really need him to do, things that we can't do right now and that he's going to help do. And, it's amazing.
I love it, man. I guess last thing on Conor, does that mean we're going to see you at UFC 303 supporting your business partner there?
Everybody's asking that, huh? Yeah, I mean, I would love to. What an epic event. I mean, look, you've interviewed me for a long time. You've been a supporter for a long time, and I appreciate that. I want to say that first. I really appreciate that. Second fold of that is I never talk bad about anybody else, man. I don't. So why wouldn't I want to go to one of the most epic MMA events of the year, could be ever, right? Of course I would want to go, yeah. So you'll probably lose there.
I love it. Well, I look forward to it. Hopefully we'll see you in June. All right, let's talk about another. We got Conor McGregor, biggest star in combat sports, but I'll just say the biggest BKFC fighter right now has to be Mike Perry. 5-0, amazing performance against Thiago Alves. But you look at the track record, Eddie Alvarez, Luke Rockhold, Michael Venom Page. I mean, I guess what do you just make of his run with BKFC? And I mean, what does Mike Perry mean to your organization right now?
I mean, he moves needles again. He's another needle mover. He knows how to talk, he knows how to promote, and he certainly knows how to fight. So he has the complete package for us. I'm going down. Actually, I'm going to travel to 2 different fighters next week to talk about really big time potential opponents for him that I think are, again, going to move the needle, because anything that I do with him has to be really marquee. We had somebody else in there, and then Thiago ended up wanting to step in, I think about 4 weeks out, and he did. And, he came in to fight, and obviously he called it a career. It's not in him anymore, but we have some big marquee things that are going to happen for Mike Perry, some really big plans for him. And look, eventually, I don't think it's right now, but look, in a year, 2 years from now, it could be hard to get him opponents in bare knuckle, right? So, especially of marquee names, but right now, they're still knocking down the door. They're still knocking on the door every day.
I love it. Would one of those trips potentially be to England to talk to Darren Till as a possibility? I know those guys have been jawing back and forth a little bit.
I mean, look, I definitely did talk to Darren Till. I will talk to Darren Till again. I don't know if he's ready for this yet. I think he might want to get a boxing match in first, but I'll certainly talk to him. He was cool to talk to, and someone we'd love to continue talking to. Another one is a complete legend in the game. I hope we get this done next week, man, because that's everybody's going to be excited about that match. It's good. It's going to be awesome. Then we also have our own champ that he wants to fight, and won't move the needle as much, but will be a fantastic fight. Him versus Dave Mundell. They fought in MMA, and he beat Dave Mundell, and I think that now Dave Mundell's the champ. That's another option. We have a lot of options with him, and we're going to utilize them obviously in the near future. I'd love to have him back probably sometime around September-ish.
The history with the champ is interesting, right? I mean, that makes it intriguing. But it is a weird situation, right? Because it's a no-brainer that Mike Perry deserves to fight for the title, right? I mean, there's no question about it. But as you said, it's all about these marquee matchups. And if he's the title holder, how do you deny the contenders opportunity to compete, right? So it makes it a little challenging whether or not you want him to fight for the belt or not.
He gets it. He understands where we're going. We actually talked about it. He said, when am I fighting for the belt? And I said, do you want money or do you want to fight for the belt? And he said, Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't
want. But at the same time, it's like, look, it can make sense as we're building this thing up. But, who knows? Like, I think some of the names that I'm talking to, they come over and fight Mike Perry. It could be one of the most talked about combat sport events ever, really. So that's what we're trying to do right now. And then, we'll make those other decisions later. But right now, we just have to worry about putting on big matches for that are going to draw new eyeballs to the sport.
I love it. He's done a great job. All right, well, look, if anybody's new to BKFC and they want to see what it's about, you do have BKFC Fight Night this Friday, right? May 17th in Omaha, Nebraska, streaming live on the BKFC app. What can you tell us about the card? What do we need to watch for if maybe somebody's seeing this for the first time and saying, man, Conor McGregor, Mike Perry, I got to see what this sport's about. What should they be watching for this weekend?
Yeah, man, we got two explosive punchers in the main event, Dustin Pegg versus Carlos Trinidad Snake. That's going to be a hell of a main event. And then we have a lot of the local Nebraska guys in the undercard. We got Dakota Cochran's looking for his third straight win to get back in title contention, and then so many more great matchups on that undercard. But it's going to be, if you're looking for nonstop exciting action the entire night long, tune in Friday night to BKFC on the BKFC app. It's going to be a fantastic night of fights.
You guys deserve credit for that, man. I love the pacing, right? I mean, what's the biggest complaint sometimes in combat sports? It's like, why am I waiting around? Like, you guys got it. The pacing is incredible.
Yeah, man, it's action packed. The ring makes it action packed. The rule set makes it action packed. We're just doing what we have to do.
I love it. All right, last thing I got for you, Dave. I know you're busy, man. The incremental growth that you've had here is impressive. Just give me the goals for 2024. I mean, what you've done lately with these headlines, with these events, amazing. But I don't know, a new TV partner, perhaps more markets. I mean, you keep getting legalized and going to new places. Like, what's on the agenda to get done before the end of this year?
We got two offers last week from a platform and a TV deal. So we're going to discuss them in the next couple of days and get back and try to negotiate that down. So I would say, maybe by July 1st, we're looking at a TV deal. And that's important to us because then we get a TV deal, then we get the blue chip sponsors, and then we get the big money coming in. And then we pay the fighters better money, and we get the bigger name fighters coming in too. And it just works for everybody. And we're right there on the doorstep. So I think by the end of 24, we got a TV deal in place. Obviously, we have an epic partnership with Conor McGregor. Can't get much better than that. And we're putting on a hell of an event. And I'm looking at doing this epic arena in Italy. And if we can do something there, I mean, I think it would just be a dream come true.
That's amazing, man. Well, Dave, continued success, man. You've built this thing from the ground up. Like I said, basically the 6th-year anniversary, and it looks like BKFC is emerging as like the next big combat sport. So, man, Dave, appreciate the time as always.
Thank you, John, as always, too. Thanks. Bye-bye.